be sure to wear approved eye protection when working in the shop. Alright, this is our Blum Hinge press or mini press, and what we have this set up to do is to drill our holes for our hinges. So it's going to drill a cup hole for the hinge as well as 2 dowel holes, so that when we put a hinge in with the cup on the bottom and the 2 dowels, that it can fit in there and accept that hinge. Alright, so a couple things we need to look at first is, one, underneath here there's actually 3 bits, and it is drilling all 3 holes at once. So we have the 2 dowel holes and then the cup hole being drilled all at one time. There's a little guard that can be in place to help with dust management and to keep your fingers out of the way. There are some stops down here, some positive stops where your boards are going to line up to. So as you put your board up there, you can see that the corner is going to touch that stop, and when you do the other side, then this corner would touch this stop, and you can see those stops will move out of the way. If I put my board over top of it, it's just going to slide out, so I don't have to move them. They're going to kind of line themselves up. As we get ready to use this machine, if we come up here and take a look at the settings or our control panel, we have a key up here that's switched to off right now. That means as I push the button, nothing's going to happen. The machine is turned off. There's setup, which means it's going to just kind of bring the head down and it's not going to turn on. So if I push that, the head's going to drop down, but it's not going to engage the drilling portion. So you can see that it just drops down. And then there's the drill press option, and that's what we want for today because we're drilling holes. So if you want to make sure that you are setting the right option, turn that key to drill press and we should be in the right option. We have our drill press stroke, so this is what, when we hold this is what causes the drill to turn on. And we have our clamp control, which is off, auto, that means it's going to automatically clamp, and release. So when those clamps automatically clamp, we can hit release and they let go. Then here's a lockout tagout button that if you need to do any maintenance on the machine, take things apart, you would want to lock out, tag out with that main switch. Now we have this machine set up for a 1/2 inch overlay door. So that means when we install our hinges and our door is covering the opening of the cabinet, we're going to be left with a 1/2 inch overlay all the way around the cabinet door. It doesn't matter which style of doors you're using. You can use a frame door or you could use a slab door. When you put your board up here to be drilled and you hold the white button, when you first hit this white button, it's going to activate these clamps, and the clamps are going to come down and hold the workpiece in place so it doesn't move around on us. So if you just hold the white, push the white button, it's going to clamp down and the head is going to turn on. You'll notice the head did not move because I did not hold the white button. I have to hold the white button in order for that head to go down, and it's going to go down until I let go of the button. So I'm going to hold it until it goes all the way down and is no longer moving any further, and then I'm going to release it to come back up. So I would hold on to it. When it's done, release it to come back up. So now my workpiece is clamped in place with these clamps. I have to release them. So up here on the button there is off. That means the clamps aren't going to clamp at all. There's auto, which we're set to, and then there's release. So they've clamped down. I need to now release them. And as I twist this to release, the clamps are going to move back up. And now our board is free to come out. Now this hinge press is going to work for either a frame door like this, and we would still line up our pieces so that we're against the stop on the corner, and my clamp now is kind of missing this style of the door, and that's okay. We can loosen the handle on the clamp and pivot that just slightly and then tighten it back up, and now when I clamp my board down, the clamp is going to hold on to our workpiece and help keep it in place. Just because our workpiece is clamped, I'm still going to hold on to the workpiece out here when this is clamping and drilling. That way I can feel if it moves or shifts around. when my door is up here to get cut, it's important that I am flat against this back stop. There's a little ruler down here on the side, and that sits lower, and if I have a profile cut in my door, it's not going to sit very flat. So I got to make sure I'm touching that stop as well as the stop over here. You'll notice that my board is tight up against there. So here's an example of a board that has a profile already cut in there, and if I don't make sure that I'm tight against those two stops when I'm pushing forward, if I push over here away from this other stop, I can wiggle that, and that's where the profile allows the board to slide up over the ruler. So my board is not going to be straight along that straight edge. So that's why it's important to make sure we're touching both stops when we drill our hole. All right, so I'm getting ready to drill this door. I'm going to hold on to it, and I'm going to come over to the control panel, and as I hold it tight against the stops, I can just gently hold or push that white button, and these clamps are going to engage. So I'm going to do that first, and that will allow me to come back and check my workpiece, make sure I'm tight, that it's secured in place and I'm in the right location. And then once everything is verified and checked, then I can come through, and now I'm going to hold the white button, and the head is going to come down and cut. Okay, when it's done and it's come back up, then we can come back over here to the release button and hit release, and the clamps are going to release the board. So before we do this other end, I maybe clean out this sawdust a little bit to make sure my board is sitting tight against that fence. And now I just have to take my board and do opposite of what I did. I'm going to make sure I'm against those two stops, and I'm going to make sure my clamp is pushed over, so it's going to grab my workpiece. As I engage the clamps, it's going to touch my stile. So I'm going to get it to clamp, and now it's locked in place, and I'm good to drill my hole. Okay, when it hit the wood, something caused the bit to bind a little bit, so we're going to just try that again. And release it. When we're done, we're going to hit release. And there are hinge holes all drilled in, and it's drilling the dowel holes as well as the cup hole. Now, one thing with the cup hole is we want to make sure that we're deep enough. So when we put a hinge in, we want to make sure that that hinge goes all the way in and is going to be seated tight against the workpiece. So when I've got my hinge all the way in, I don't want any gap around where the hinge is sitting on the door. I want it to be nice and flat. So before you clamp down your hinge, or maybe you have a hinge that doesn't have dowels in there, you can test and make sure your hole is deep enough. Now the hole can be too deep, where if we drill it too far down, it could cause problems, especially when we're putting a profile around our door. So with a hole like this one's been double done, you can see the amount of material that's left at the bottom of this hole compared to where it is on the slope here. It's almost cutting through right here on the edge. So you got to be careful that your profile that you're choosing to do is not too aggressive or too deep into the project, so that you don't cut into those hinge holes. This round one usually works pretty nice. We can also set the depth a little shallower so it's not going in so deep to that cup hole. And if you're going to make adjustments on this, talk to your instructor so that we can work this out and run some test pieces, so that we don't accidentally have it coming all the way through, or that we don't set up a machine incorrectly and have some problems. Now this machine is referred to as a hinge press or a mini press, and it's going to take our hinges that have dowels already attached to them, and it's going to drive them into that hole that we've just created. So if I take my hinge and open it up, and I'm going to turn this around so the cup is facing me, and I'm going to place it on this ram. So there's a little ram right here. You can see there's a little ball, a little pressure spring to keep your hinge kind of located on there. And then I'm going to take this back end and kind of push it downwards so it's locked into place. Now I can take the handle of this ram and pull it down, all the way down. And now when I hit the white button, the machine is going to drive that hinge into the hole, because this hinge has these dowels on here that are going to be permanently put in there. Okay, they've got little burrs on them to keep them wedged down in as it gets pressed in. So I'm going to turn the machine on, and you're going to see it's going to press it in. It's not going to turn on and drill this time because that ram is down. So when this ram is all the way down, I'm going to hit the release button, or I'm going to let go of the white button, and the head is going to come back up. Now the hinge is pressed in there. We're done at this point, so I'm going to release the board from the clamps so that we can pull it out of here. And now this hinge is nice and tight against the board. It's pressed down good, and it's kind of permanently in there. We could take these screws out and take that hinge out of the cup hole and move it around, you know, sand still, things like that. Clamps. Now this time I'm not pressing in a hinge, and the reason for that is we're going to use a different style of hinge. Now these hinges have dowels on them that are going to get wedged open when I clamp this down. There's a little metal rod that comes out of this dowel and is going to push that dowel opening bigger. So I'm going to take the hinge and I'm going to put it in the hole and push it all the way down so it's nice and flat. And then I just close this lever and it's locked in place. So now if I need to come around and take this out, maybe I need to do some more sanding, maybe I messed up and I got to make a new board, then I can come in with a screwdriver or a little pry bar and pry open this lever, and the hinge will come right back out, just like it was new. So we've switched to this style of hinge. You may see a hinge like that around still. So even though this is called a hinge press or a mini press, we're not always pressing in our hinges with this. We may be just drilling the holes. Once your hinges are attached, then we can take the clip of the hinge, which looks something like this, and this clip has a little point on the end here. Okay, you can kind of see it has a little, kind of comes to a point right here, and that point is going to line up with this rod right here. So as I put these two together, I'm going to clip it on there, and then I push the back together and it snaps on. So the clip is the part that attaches to the cabinet, the cup attaches to the door. So once they're attached, you can very easily take the hinge off of the cabinet and separate the two. Maybe you need to do more sanding, maybe you're going to do your finishing, and you can separate them very easily. So this is our hinge press. If you have any questions, please talk to your instructor about how to operate.